102.7, it's Kiss FM, it's Kendrick and SZA, all the stars, Seacrest with you. And we have the perfect wake up this morning. DeVon Franklin has come into the studio.
Yo.
It's great to see you, man.
Good to see you, man. Good morning.
Just his energy, Tanya, you said it, just his energy is contagious, isn't it?
It's so contagious. I'm so happy you're here.
Man, always a blessing to be here.
Well, Tanya follows your every move, and rightfully so. She's read The Wait, and you've also the Hollywood Commandments and
Yes.
Miracles from Heaven. And I guess I sort of backdoor got to know you.
Yeah.
Because I read this quote in Oprah's book of quotes, right? The book of wisdom.
The Wisdom of Sundays.
The Wisdom of Sundays is the book. And I was flipping through, and we do 2 quotes a day here on this show. And I love quotes because, in a world of clutter, they in a unique way can simplify complicated issues in your brain.
Yeah.
Right? Like you think through so many
Totally.
layers of things, and then you hear a sentence and you just have clarity.
Right.
So the one that struck me, and I told Tanya and Patty and everybody about it, was you said, the truth is you and I are in control of only 2 things: how we prepare for what might happen and how we respond to what just happened.
Yeah.
So stop making yourself crazy about everything else.
Right.
So good.
Right. Absolutely. Because I really believe just by compartmentalizing and simplifying things that way, it takes out the stress. Because there's so many things that happen to us on a day-to-day basis that are not of our doing. But we have a choice. How are we going to prepare, or how are we going to respond? And most of the time, me included, our response is where we find our most stress, because we're resisting something that we didn't ask for. It happened. So we're resisting it, and we're saying, why did it happen? We may never know the reason why. But the question is, what are we going to do about it? And so our response is so important. And also preparation when it comes to success, what we're trying to do in life. Are we preparing for opportunities before they even arrive? Those 2 things, to me, preparing and responding, are things that I've been living by, and it certainly have helped. And it was a blessing that it helped you.
Well,
It's so good.
I'm always curious to know. So it sounds like you figured it out, right? So for people who have figured it out, how do they get to that place of peace in figuring it out? Like, what has it been for you?
Yeah, and look, I mean, as I write these things or have quotes, I am living them every day. So it's not figured. It hasn't been figured out every day. We're working on figuring it out, and it's a continuous process. And for me, I'm from Northern California. I grew up in Oakland, grew up in the church. My father died, when I was 9 years old. And I'm the middle child of 3 boys. And so being raised in a family, by a single mother and by my grandmother and her 7 sisters, as I got older, I spent a lot of time with them and a lot of time in church and a lot of time just trying to figure out who I am and who I was as a man, when you don't have a father figure. And, we were there. My father had the heart attack. My mother took us to the hospital. She had said, we saw him in the morgue. She said, kiss your father goodbye. And here we are, as a kid, I'm like, I don't know what to do with this. I didn't ask for it, right? I didn't even know how to prepare for it.
Right.
But the only thing I could manage was my response to it.
Right.
And so my response was, he was an alcoholic. And my response was, I'm going to break the cycle, because his father was an alcoholic and my uncles were alcoholics. So my response was like, okay, I'm not going to drink. Not because I'm afraid of it. I just don't want to become that.
Yeah.
And I also want to complete the work that he couldn't complete. So much of, where I've been able to talk, when you talk about wisdom or ideas, it comes from living. And it also comes from trying to figure out what is the best path in this life. And also, I've always wanted to, maybe it's because of being a middle child, like I got to find my place in the world.
Right.
Where do I fit?
Right.
Where do I fit? What am I supposed to do? And that has really been a motivating factor in what I do and how I do it.
DeVon Franklin is with us early this morning. Tanya, you, like I said, you really follow his every move, and you read his words.
I
and
really
live
do.
by them.
There was actually, in response to this topic, there was one thing that really stood out to me. You were talking about your wife, Megan Good, and she was getting all these roles. She's an actress. She was having all these roles, and she really wanted to be more action movies, and she wasn't getting those roles. And you're like, how can you prepare for this? So she was going to the gym and getting her body into like this physical shape to be in action movies, and then she got the call to be an action movie, and I was like,
totally.
and I was like, that is such a what you say is so profound, but getting actual examples of how you can like put it in your life is like really useful.
Thank you. Yeah, I just believe in that. I really believe in, because sometimes we want to wait till the opportunity presents itself, or we want to wait until a little bit of the opportunity materializes, and then we want to get ready.
Yeah.
But what I've found is it's too late.
Yeah, you got to think at just Tanya. We're talking to DeVon. All this positivity. I can only see one word on your sweatshirt. Your hair's covering the rest. What does your sweatshirt say?
It says, it says, I'm a mess, I'm a loser.
I mean, that is not the theme of this conversation.
No, so we have another guest. We have a guest this morning. Her name is BB Rexa. These are her lyrics. So I'm wearing her merch.
That's like DeVon's kryptonite. Put that away.
I know. This is her merch and her lyrics. So I wear it for her.
Have you read, Tanya, about The Truth About Men? Have you heard this book? You can pre-order it now.
Yes, I want to get my hands on this. You have no idea how bad I want to read this.
We want to come back and ask you a few questions about that. 102.7 Kiss FM. Hang tight. Your next book is called The Truth About Men. It's coming out in February. You can pre-order it on Amazon as we speak. What is the premise, and what do we undiscover? What do we learn in this book?
Yeah, this is a book that, interestingly enough, has kind of been a long time in the making, because, being a man and realizing that no matter how committed I might want to be, there's just issues that I deal with, and I know that other men deal with. And so last fall, after The Commandments came out, actually it was Maria Shriver. I was on an interview with her, and we were talking, and I just told her just off the cuff about this idea for the book, which I'll tell you. And she's like, you got to write that now. I said, no, I can't write another book. I just wrote a book. But because there was so much going on in the world about men, I thought it was time to write it. And the idea is that every man deals with lust, and every man deals with love, right? And so in the book, I talk about lust operates like an untrained dog in men, and love is the master. And so as men, in order to get control and have success, we have to master our lust. Because when you see so many of the challenges that are happening in the world, I believe it's because men have given themselves over to lust. Lust for women, lust for money, lust for power, lust for sex. And when we learn to master those things with love for self, love for our community, love for women in our lives, love for our family, when we put love in charge, we win. And so I wanted to write this book to show men how to do it, but also to bring women into the conversation. Because many women don't realize that sometimes you're not dealing with the master in a man, you're dealing with the dog in a man. Now, are men dogs? Absolutely not. But can we act like one? Yes, we can. And so when I'm talking about this, I'm not pointing the finger. I'm saying me too. When I got married and all of a sudden I had these lustful thoughts, I'm like, wait a minute, I'm committed.
Right.
What's going on here?
I'm glad to know he has lustful thoughts, though, right? For a minute, I thought the man was not human.
No, not at all. So I wanted to write this book about the truth, that we all deal with it, but we don't have to give ourselves over to it.
We talk a lot of calls on the show from people, married couples that are going through tough times dealing with infidelity.
Yeah.
Right. Why is that such a big deal? Why is that such the universal issue?
Why? Because and I talk about this in the book. And one of the reasons why it's a universal issue is it's about appetite. There is a chapter in the book that I call The One You Feed. So if you feed the dog or you feed the master, whoever you feed is going to grow.
Wow.
And in our dating life, most of the time, men are taught to feed the dog. Eat whatever you want. So the dog is selfish. It only wants what it wants when it wants it.
Right.
The master love is selfless. It's all about the greater good. But in dating, what do? Men are taught, get as much as you can while you can get it.
Right.
And then all of a sudden, when you get married, if you haven't gone through a process to curb your appetite, when you get married,
you still have that hunger.
You still have that hunger.
That's a simple way of putting it, isn't
it? And also in marriage, no one talks about, okay, how do you deal with these feelings? How do you deal with these urges? And just because you have an urge doesn't make you a bad person, but how do you deal with it and not act on it? How do you feel it but not put yourself in a position where you then go and do something and step outside of your marriage? So in the book, I talk about all these things. I give men and women tips and tools on how to deal with it, because the reality is we're in the conversation together.
Tanya?
I mean, this is a question. How do women encourage the better behavior from the men?
Okay, so two
like
things.
If you see potential in a man, how do you?
Yes.
And she's not referring. She's not referring to Jason Tardik, formerly of The Bachelorette, but just in hypothetical.
In general,
hypothetical. Hypothetically.
Yeah, sure. But good question.
It's two things. One, you have to see, first of all, does that man show signs of the master? Meaning, is he selfless? Does he care about the greater good? Is he trying to pursue good in his life? Because if there are glimmers of hope, then you speak to the positive in him. Because sometimes men have not been taught, here's how you need to love. Here's what it looks like. And sometimes it does take the love of a woman to help a man learn how to love. So that's number one. Number two, you have to realize that we don't have the power to change anyone. Right? So if you're going into it saying, I want this person to change, stop right there. Mm-hmm. Even if you see good in them, you have to ask yourself, if right now this is the best I'm going to get, can you live with that? And if you can't, that is not the right person for you. And I talk about this in the book where too often women will hang in there with a man who really only has the dog in control, hoping that one day the master's going to show up. And then what happens is the dog ends up doing them dirty, and they say, well, what happened? Well, he showed you who he was when you met him.
Right.
You should have believed him.
Yeah.
And the best thing that sometimes a good woman can do with the man that they love, and if that man's not willing to change, is to step away. Because sometimes the only thing that men will respond to is pain of losing the very thing that could help them become who they were destined to be.
Ooh.
Patty, Tanya, resonation. Resonation.
I'm telling you, you are such a game changer. Like,
wow.
You
Thank
have a way
Tanya.
of articulating things, and it's
inhuman,
yeah.
And
and it's profound, and it's stuff that we deal with on a daily basis, and it's not just in relationships, just in life. There's so much. You have so much knowledge, and like I literally, I've read everything I can. I try and listen to everything I can from you.
Guess what? A big month is going to be February when that book comes out.
Yes.
The Truth About Men.
Yes.
DeVon Franklin. We could go on, but thank you so much for coming in and shedding a little light. Great to chat with you. Great to see you in
Likewise.
person, bro.
Thanks, man. Thanks for having me. As always, I appreciate it.